Okay, I think we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. My name's Rhea. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Rhea Sood, and I'm part of Blood Pressure Project. I'll be your moderator for today's meeting. I'm so happy you all could join us this evening. And just a quick thank you to the medical students who are here today to be on our panel. You'll get to know who they are very shortly. Just to let you know our agenda for today, we're really excited to be partnering with so many pre-health organizations to bring this panel to you all. So we're going to just briefly introduce all the participants of this meeting. Then, as I said, we'll go into a panelist introduction. We'll get into a Q&A panel of some questions that you all had submitted on the link, and then you all will have a chance to ask them questions, and then we'll have a quick wrap up and photo. So starting off with the organization introductions.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Vivitha. I'm one of the co-coordinators of Blood Pressure Project. Rebecca, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm the other co-coordinator of Blood Pressure Project.
Okay, and before we begin, I'd like to just talk about a few announcements. Throughout the panel, we'd appreciate it if you left yourself on mute, just out of respect for whoever's talking. However, if you have a comment or a question, feel free to leave it in the chat. And we also have a section designated for people to directly ask questions to our panelists later on at the panel. So if you want to hold your question till then, you feel free to do so. Also, I want to emphasize, don't feel like y'all have to take notes at 100 miles per hour throughout the panel or like memorize every word coming at you. We will be sending you an email on either Sunday or Monday, which includes a recording of this panel as well as slides, the entire slide deck with organization information, as well as the questions being asked. So rest easy, enjoy the panel, and yeah, have a good time. All right. So to begin, we actually wanted to introduce you all to the organizations that actually put on this panel for you. This pandemic has made it very difficult for students in terms of gaining mentorship or extracurricular activities due to social distancing restrictions. So we wanted to make you all aware of some opportunities to not only help your community, but develop your resume. So it's a win-win situation for all. All right, so to begin. The Blood Pressure Project, aka the best pre-health group at Cal. I'm a little biased, I have to say. We are a student-run nonprofit that operates at the intersection between public health, education, and cardiovascular health management. In a non-pandemic season, we're all about providing free blood pressure screenings, educational workshops about the measurement of hypertension and how to combat it, as well as providing connection to primary care to underserved populations in both Berkeley and San Francisco. Also, as you may have realized at this point, we are in a pandemic. So in response to this, my team and I have actually expanded our services to put out our newest project called the Coronary Combat Initiative, which is all about us and our team taking part in the Californian COVID-19 response. We've done fundraisers with Doctors Without Borders, where we raised $1,300 for international COVID response relief. We're doing another fundraiser with UNICEF to provide PPE to India. We're doing a PPE fundraiser and homemade mask initiative to donate PPE to local clinics and hospitals in California. And we've even publicized about blood drives across UCSF and the American Red Cross. So if this is something you vibe with, feel free to fill out our interest form, and we'll let you all know about the volunteer opportunities in the future. And don't worry, all of this information will be sent out to you in an email as well. All right, next slide, please. Okay, the second group we had partner with us was MEDLife, and MEDLife is such a cool organization at UC Berkeley's campus because not only does it operate as a club, it is actually a decal you can take for units as well. MEDLife stands for Medicine, Education, and Development, and this organization is all about improving health incomes in impoverished communities in a sustainable manner, which is key. It is an international organization based in Lima, Peru, whose mission is to eradicate poverty. And as a Berkeley chapter, they have a club that focuses on local efforts such as volunteering with and donating to the homeless community in Berkeley. Their decal actually focuses on training students to be able to prepare basically relief efforts in Lima, Peru, and they teach you like Spanish medical terminology, Peruvian culture, what it means to be a sustainable volunteer, and basically sensitivity when practicing medicine. And it's a really, really cool organization, and I highly recommend you check it out. If you're interested in this, check out their interest form as well. All right, Rebecca, take it away.
So our next partner is the Berkeley Kidney Disease Screening and Awareness Program. And similar to BPP, they're also here to provide free screenings to underserved communities across the Bay Area. But instead of, blood pressure, they do kidney disease. And yeah, also a super cool organization to join if you're interested in volunteering and helping out your local communities. And interest form is also in the chat. And then finally, our last partner is the California Health Professional Student Alliance. They're really focused on educating future leaders in healthcare to really reform the healthcare system, as well as working with community partners and helping people receive health coverage. So now that we've finished our intros, I'd like to introduce our host for today, Ria. She is our internal continuing development officer in Blood Pressure Project, and she hosts all of our guest speakers at our meetings. So take it away.
Hi, yes, thank you for the introduction. Sorry, before I start, real quickly, I'm getting some private messages about the MEDLife interest form not being open, so if someone on MEDLife wants to take care of that and then send another link, that would be great. But yes, I'm so excited for you all to be here and to introduce the panelists for this evening, starting off with Andres Calvillo. Andres is a first-generation Mexican-American and the first in his family to earn a bachelor's degree. He was born and raised in Modesto, California, and received his biochem and molecular biology degree from UC Davis, and is currently a third-year medical student at UCSF. He has played music since 5th grade, was in the marching band and a student-run clinic at UC Davis, and now finds himself with a strong desire to pursue a career in radiology. So welcome, Andres. Andres, if you want to quickly unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
All right. Next panelist, we have Michelle Leung. Michelle graduated from UC Berkeley in 2019 with a degree in MCB Immunology and English. Go Bears. At UCSF, she is now a second year in med school, serving as the UCSF Asian Pacific American Medical Student Association, APAMSA, Community Engagement Chair and National Conference Director on APA-MSA National Board. At Berkeley, she is involved with Cal Figure Skating, Labor Coach, and OChem tutoring. She's interested in working with API populations in San Francisco, particularly Chinatown, and is open to many specialties right now. So Michelle, if you want to unmute yourself and say hi.
Yeah, hi everyone, thanks for having me.
And finally, we have Ernesto Rojas. Ernesto is a first-generation college student and immigrant from Honduras. He went to UCLA to study molecular cell and developmental biology, where he graduated in 2018 with honors in the College of Letters and Sciences and as UCLA's Senior of the Year. Ernesto is currently a second-year MD PhD student at UCSF, where he also serves the Latinx Medical Student Association Social Justice and Advocacy Chair, and as a Vice President of Medical Education for the LMSA West Coast. He's interested in using his background in medicine, science, and ethics to continue to work in reproductive and developmental biology. And Ernesto, if you want to say hi.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
All right, well, thank you all so much for devoting your time and your Wednesday evening with all of us. I'm sure we're all very appreciative. So just getting started with the Q&A. Andres, if you want to start, and then the other panelists can just chime in after. So Andres, how did your experiences from childhood introduce you to the world of medicine and get you interested in that?
I was looking at these questions like, wow, they do not come to play games. So I will say that my biggest experience that kind of introduced me to this world of medicine came from my mom. So she immigrated from Mexico when she was a little girl, and she didn't really have much growing up at all. But yet when I was little, she really instilled in me this other-centeredness where like we would go to McDonald's or somewhere, and she would always make a point to invite people who were just sitting in the parking lot, who were clearly hungry, who needed some help, that it was just so clear to my mom. And mind you, she's like 5'2", this tiny woman, and I'm a little fraidy cat, like 8 years old. And she would just go up to them like she had known them her whole life and was like, hey, what do you want? And so like that kind of instilled in me this just deep caring for others that eventually translated to wanting to go into medicine.
Thank you, Ines. That's really inspiring to hear. Ernesto or Michelle, if either of you would like to share.
Yeah, I guess for myself, like I said, I was a first generation student and, went to college and to be a doctor. So I really never knew what, being a doctor was going to be like. I just knew that I liked biology. And then once I was in college, I discovered that I love science and I love discovery. And eventually learned that there was a thing called an MD PhD that would, pay for you to go to medical school and you would be able to do research. And even explaining now to my parents like what I do is very confusing. I usually just tell them that I'm a scientist and going to be a doctor. So I think a lot of that was just me exploring the things that I enjoyed and finding that medicine and science merged so beautifully. And I did ethics as well. So together that kind of led me into the world of medicine.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's really inspiring to hear both of you being first generation Americans and then working your way to med school. And Michelle, yeah, if you'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, my answer to this is going to be pretty short because up until college, I really thought I was going to do journalism or something humanities related. And I actually entered college as a history major and then switched to English and then switched to MCB. So I really thought I was going to do journalism or something in the humanities up until college.
And that's really promising to hear. I feel like a lot of people think that people want to go into med school and know that they want to be a doctor from a very young age, but really it's just using college as a time for exploration. So that's really interesting to hear. And Michelle, actually, we'll start off with you. If you could just talk about, we did go over kind of your undergrad school, go Bears again, but if you could just elaborate on what you did and what your journey was like in terms of extracurriculars and maybe talk more about your transition from humanities to STEM.
Yeah, so I went to Berkeley for undergrad, which I was really glad about because it's pretty close to where I grew up in South Bay. And I majored in molecular cell biology, immunology, infectious diseases, and then also English. And I actually started off with just history, and then I took one history class in college, and I was like, I can't do this. So I switched to English because those are the two subjects that I liked the most in high school. And I think at the beginning I also had taken general chemistry kind of as a, how you have the core requirements, I think, for College of Life and Sciences. And a bunch of my high school friends were taking those, and I was like, okay, I'll take it with them. And then I ended up really liking chemistry, actually. So I made a lot of friends who were all MCB majors, and then I joined some clubs, in particular Labor Coach, a lot of MCB kind of type clubs. And then I ended up really liking science kind of things. So I decided to do an MCB major as well as English. And yeah, that's how I ended up in doing both MCB and English. It was kind of I couldn't choose between the two, very indecisive. So I just did both. And then in terms of extracurriculars, I think the main one that I did during college that I spent the most time on was actually Cal figure skating. I served as the vice president for a year and a half or so. And it was really, really fun. I've been figure skating since I was very young. And so I knew that was something I wanted to do going into college. And I made a lot of friends there who were in all kinds of different backgrounds and different majors. And it was just really awesome getting to travel with them and compete with them. And then in terms of other extracurriculars, I think those ones I kind of just happened into. For example, Labor Coach. Like I said, I made a lot of friends in MCB, and some of them were in Labor Coach, and they were like, oh, this is a really cool program. And I speak Cantonese at home. That was my first language. And I realized I was kind of losing it because I went to college and I was I'm speaking English all the time. I don't get to practice my Cantonese. And so that was something I wanted to gain back. I didn't want to lose my language skill there and be unable to communicate with my relatives and stuff. And so what I think some of you maybe know what Labor Coach is, but it's a program where you translate for mothers who are giving birth. And so I was like, this sounds like a really cool opportunity to practice my Cantonese skills and help someone out and get to see a really cool birth. And so that's how I ended up in labor coach. And that's actually a big part of why I decided to do medicine, labor coach and my experiences there. And then I think the other major extracurricular that I spent a lot of time on was tutoring and teacher scholaring. So Berkeley has like a teacher scholaring program, which is like lab assisting. And I really liked organic chemistry. And so after organic chemistry was over, I was like, I kind of want to do more. And so I decided to join the SLC for tutoring. And then I also did some teacher scholaring, which one of my GSI suggested I do. And it was nice to have like a little extra income from tutoring, and then also really nice to like just get to be in the lab and like keep up with organic chemistry and things. So yeah, those are the major extracurriculars I was involved in. I really liked my time in Berkeley.
Hey, that's really good to hear. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing, and definitely rare to hear people want to continue with OChem, but and that's really inspiring. Ernesto or Andres, if either of you would like to go next.
Sure thing. Oh,
Good.
so I guess and just tell kind of the story of like, so I went to UCLA, and I grew up in LA, so I was close to home, and I decided to study molecular cell and developmental bio because I just wanted to do something where I was studying biology, and I was fascinated by the question of science and like, how does a cell become you and I think that's still my favorite question in biology, because it's beautiful to think that two cells merge and grow into you and me. So when I went to UCLA, I discovered that a lot of the faculty were not reading textbooks, but writing them, and they were the ones discovering these things. So I decided to do the biomedical research minor there, which basically got you into a lab to do research. And around the same time, I was also earning my EMT license, and I was actually at the birth of my cousin Dylan, and that was the moment that I was just enamored by like how cool it was to see a full human being come out of like another human being. So I decided to do research in germ cell biology, studying infertility by using primates as our model organism. And around that same time, I was working full time at a CarMax, the car dealership. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but I was working there for my first year, and quickly realized that you couldn't really do research and work full time and go to school and all that. So I decided to quit, and it was very scary for me because again, I was on scholarships, first gen, so I really didn't know how I was going to pay for like food and stuff. I was very lucky to be asked to join a minority student research program that UCLA had. And it was really there that I learned that there was this community of underrepresented in science and medicine group that was very like close knit and allowed me to get into contact with mentors that looked like me. And through the next couple of years, it paid for me to do research and allowed me to go do different fellowships during the summers and during this year. And so it was really there that I really enjoyed, being able to be mentored and be a mentor myself. And I think those were the things that really gave me joy, was being able to help people who looked like me, who had never seen like what science is, and helping them be able to move into science and medicine. And that was really where I was mostly engaged in extracurriculars. And I think it was really there through mentorship that I was able to be able to go to an MD PhD program.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's incredible that you're able to find that mentorship and have that guidance for you throughout your undergrad. And Andres, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, of course. So I went to UC Davis, coags, and I majored in biochemistry and molecular bio, and sadly did not minor in music like I wanted to, because the only music minor was in musicology, which is history of music, and I can't do history for the life of me. And so I decided to just major in what I signed up for. And I would say it almost felt like I went to Davis for marching band, and then school was kind of around that, because it took up a lot of my time, and I really, really enjoyed it though. So I did marching band all 4 years. I was in the drum section, and I'm really glad I did that because, one, I love music, and I got to do it throughout the whole year, all 4 years. And it consequently also helped with physical activity, which I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. So it's a blessing in disguise there. And similar to Michelle, I really wanted to get immersed in my first language, which was Spanish. And there was a student-run clinic at Davis that was in Sacramento called Clínica Tepati. And I didn't find out about it until the end of my second year at Davis. And so then thankfully I was able to get in and kind of work with people who just reminded me of family. And so it was really nice to have that sort of, I guess, spin on what I was interested in, which was just helping people. That's a common theme a lot of people who want to go into medicine have, is just, I want to help people, but there's so many different ways, and that's the way that felt really near and dear to me, is to be able to help people using Spanish and just relating on so many levels, like cultural, and just saying like, oh, I've heard that before, like tell me more about it. And so those were my favorite things there that I did in undergrad.
Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, I think it's really important to note how diverse backgrounds you all had and how you're all together at UCSF now. I think that's really inspiring to hear. And so kind of going off of that, I'm curious to hear how you all dealt with all the many requirements of med school applications that we hear about, like test scores and research. You all talked about your extracurriculars, like clinical and volunteering opportunities, and like if you feel medical school applicants really need to have done everything. So Ernesto, if you want to start first.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting. So I'm on the admissions committee this year as one of the interviewers. I think one of the big things is you should never do something just because you're checking a box. The most important thing is for you to be yourself, because when you're genuine, when you're real, people really, enjoy and connect with that. So I think that's the first thing that I'll just open up with. Requirements are hard. You have to take the MCAT. You have to, see what a doctor does, right? Like there are things that you just do, right? You're not shadowing because you have to do an X amount of hours. You're shadowing because you're trying to see, is this world for me? Because being a doctor is awful. It's absolutely crazy to do. But it's the only thing I would ever want to do with my life. So I think once you realize that, you can communicate that to whoever you need to. In terms of research, exploring research, what does research mean? Asking questions, being inquisitive. I think those are the things that, whatever that looks like to you can mean different things. Right? You can do research in a clinical sense, in a basic science sense, but doing it because, you are enjoying it and because it's something that brings you joy that you can really communicate with someone else. And it's expensive. There is a real disenfranchisement of people who are not as well off when going to medical school. I think, I had to take out loans to be able to apply to medical schools and to be able to fly and, do all the things that I needed to do. I took like one of those like Princeton Review exam things because I just didn't know how to build my own for cheaper. So it's expensive and it's really unfortunate. There are ways to bring the prices down, like the AAMC has vouchers and stuff. But it is difficult. But I think one of the big things that I just want to share is that having everything is not what you want. You really want to show that you understand what it takes to be a doctor, that you've seen what a doctor does, and that you understand why you want to do it. And what makes you unique about, your journey. And there's something unique about each of you. And I know that is guaranteed because I enjoy every time I have a conversation with a student who's applying and, interviewing, because all of you have such a beautiful, unique story that brought you to where you are. And just making sure that shines is really what you want to do.
Thank you, Nessa. That's really helpful to hear more about that process. And I feel like this is less of a personal answer, but so Andres or Michelle, if either of you have anything you'd like to add, or if you agree with what Nessa said as well.
Yeah, definitely agree with everything you said. And I think if I had to emphasize a point, I would really emphasize the being yourself part. It's so hard to convince yourself that you are enough, but you all are. So I hope you take a moment, go to the mirror if you have one, or whatever shiny surface so you can see yourself, and just tell yourself like you're enough. You don't need to be like everyone else combined, because that's just destructive to you, and that's not what schools want. And so I encourage you to think about being on the interviewer side, and just imagine you're seeing someone for the first time after you had read about them, and on paper they look great. Like they did the things that they liked. They did, let's say they checked off all the buckets, but then if you talk to them and like, oh, tell me about all of these wonderful things you did, and they don't know what to say, or they don't feel any sort of feelings from doing those things, and those are the things that are a little bit discouraging, like, like, why did you do those things? And so as you're going about your undergrad, doing, whether it's research, extracurriculars, things that bring you joy, any Marie Kondo fans? And so like, if you're doing things that spark joy, it's gonna come out in your essays, it's gonna come out in interviews, and it's just gonna come out with who you are as a person. Like there's no need to be flashy, there's no need to be everything. It's just like, this is who you are. And if you think about it, in 20 years when you're doctors, you were always meant to be a doctor, you just needed to get the degree. So like right now you're a doctor, and so you're gonna be the best dang doctor that you are just by being yourself. And then to get a little bit more into like the practical things of applying to medical school, there are certain requirements. And so I think the best thing that you can do if you have absolutely no idea what the application process looks like is just learning about the timeline and learning about the different parts, and then learning about each of the parts one at a time so as to not overwhelm yourself, because there is a lot, but if you just go piece by piece, you'll make progress, and over time you'll eventually get to where you need to be.
Thank you, Andres. That's really reassuring to hear, and I think a very important reminder to tell ourselves that we are enough, because it is easy to get into that mindset that we're not. And Michelle, if you'd like to add anything onto what Ernesto and Andres have shared.
Yeah, I agree with what Ernesto and Andres has said just now. And I think for me, it was even helpful to just think about it as like really this, instead of thinking about, oh, this checklist of things, I thought about more of like a story, like what you're interested in, and you want to tell the story of how you ended up here. And if you think of it that way, it makes writing your apps a lot easier. It makes explaining your story and talking to like interviewers and telling the schools how you ended up here a lot easier. And it's a lot more fun that way. Like I think if you think about what you want to do in terms of extracurriculars and like research and stuff as like a checklist, it's not as fun as if you're like, I really like this thing because like, for example, a couple of us talked about like, oh, we wanted to really learn back our languages, our like primary languages. And if you think about it as like, this is the reason that I wanted to do this, and this is like related to the reason that I want to be in medicine, that I think that helped me a lot in terms of figuring out what I wanted to put my time into. So yeah, I think that was one thing. And then the other question was like, just in terms of requirements and things, for test scores and like research and extracurriculars, I think in terms of test scores, I think it does matter that you have to take certain requirements. And I was lucky enough that I knew people who had done all of this before me who could give me advice on how to do these things. So for things like the MCAT, I ended up not having to take any like courses or buy any books or anything. And it's honestly very, very expensive to have to do all of this. And I feel like it's really hard to afford all of that. And so I guess just speaking to people and asking for advice and asking what lots of different people have done and then picking out what works for you is something that worked really well for me.
Great, thank you all so much for sharing. And Andres, directing this next question to you first, what did you do during the years between undergrad and medical school, and why are these activities significant to you? I'd also like to add a question which I received in the chat about if you felt prepared for med school after undergrad, like how confident did you feel going into med school based on your undergrad experiences? So lots of questions there. Feel free to answer all or just one or any of those. But yeah, Andres, if you'd like to start.
Definitely. So love this question, because I did not plan to take gap years, but lo and behold, during my fourth year, I'm like, ooh, if I wanted to go into med school right away, I should have started last year. It's like, well, guess I'm taking a gap year or two. And so that's what happened. And then when I graduated, I really tried to keep the question, like, why do I want to do things, like my driving force. And so for me, the things that I want to do was I wanted to get experience with my degree as if I were to have, if as if I were to stop in my education here. And I wanted to use my degree because I mean I worked for it. I like to see what that would give me in like the job market. And then also I had loans, I had family, so I wanted to take care of those things. And so I ended up working at a winery. Where did that come from? It was the first job. Oh no, I lied. I worked at Amazon first because they were the only one who offered me a job after like 100 applicants. That my naive self was like, I have a bachelor's, I'll get in anywhere. No, I did not. So then I was like, all right, give me the graveyard shift. Like, I need money, I have loans to pay. And so then once that was over, worked at a winery, which was the next thing that offered me a job. I was like, okay, well, close to home. It will utilize my degree to some extent. So like, let's go at it. And they were significant to me in ways that I didn't expect because one, when I worked at Amazon, I was around people who were doing this, like this was their job, like 20, 30 plus years, or however long Amazon's been around, working there. And they were doing the job because they wanted to earn money. They were there because they were working really hard to support themselves, their family. They had their reasons. And it really made me think of what my reasonings were to continue pursuing what I thought I was meant to do, which was to be in the field of medicine, to care for people in whatever way that may be, whatever specialty that may be. But I could do the job. It didn't really bring me joy, but I could do it. And I felt like I had the luxury to entertain the idea of leaving that job and pursuing a career because not everyone has that fortune. So it really made me appreciate what I have, what my parents did to make this possible for me, and for me to be in a position to be able to um, take what they worked on their entire lives and work more to then give back just like they did. And so that was a grounding experience that I had never thought about. And so, I mean, if you mentioned you worked at Amazon in a winery, that's going to come up during interviews. And so I was able to really reflect on why those activities were meaningful. And only by being in them was like, I really, really challenged myself to think about those why questions that oftentimes can cause anxiety to people, but just really thinking about why am I doing this? And it just really gives yourself a lot more drive and appreciation at times.
Thank you, Andres. Yeah, that's very important to, I think, reflect back and constantly ask ourselves, why are we doing these different activities? Do we actually get joy from them? And Michelle, I'll direct this to you. What you did between, if you did anything in between, why these activities were significant, and then how confident you felt going into med school.
So I actually went straight into med school, but in the summer in between, I did a lot of like hanging out with my family, hanging out with friends, traveling. And I think that's really, really important to do before med school because like Ernesto said earlier, medicine is hard and med school is really, really hard too. And I think it's important to take a break before and like just remind yourself that you don't have to like be constantly working and like doing something productive and stuff like that. And then your second question was about how confident I was going into med school.
Yeah, based on your undergraduate experience, just how you felt going into medical school and that experience.
Yeah, I was really, really intimidated. Like, as like all my classmates are super accomplished people. They'd done amazing things in between like med school. They were doing amazing things in med school, and I was like, wow, I don't know how I ended up here. And it turns out like basically everyone feels that way. And I think we're really, really lucky that UCSF has a lot of, they have a lot of activities and panels, and they just address this a lot, imposter syndrome. And I think it helps to acknowledge it and to talk about it with people. And then just to know that other people feel the same way that you do. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing. And Ernesto, if you'd like to add on to what's been said and talk about your own experience.
Yeah, between medical school and between undergrad and going to medical school, I did a year of working in the lab that I worked in when I was an undergrad. It's generally a little bit expected of you to do research as an MD, PhD. It's kind of an odd thing if you don't do research after undergrad, if you're taking time off. There's ways around that, of course, like, life can be different for different people, but most people tend to do research. So I decided to continue to do the same research I was doing in undergrad and really, take on my own project and, have a very independent kind of workflow. And it was significant because obviously this is like, making sure that science is the thing that I want to do. And then in terms of being prepared for medical school, I think like nothing will prepare you for medical school. Like it's just so fast and so much information that is thrown at you, but you learn to, adapt. And I think adapting is something that you've done, from going to high school to college, from college to, medical school, you learn to adapt and you learn to grow. And it's having that growth mindset that really sets you apart and makes you prepared for medical school.
Thank you. And what a perfect segue to our next session, talking about medical school specifically. And so, Andres, Michelle, I'll take this over to you. What was the application process like for you? And we'll kind of combine this with the next question, which is, why did you choose UCSF over other medical schools? So if you could just briefly talk about the application process and then ultimately why you ended up choosing UCSF.
Yeah, well, UCSF was my top choice actually applying in. It's like, I think the values that the school teaches and that people here care about were really important to me. And that was a really big thing for me in choosing schools. And then in terms of application process, and then another thing about UCSF was that it was close to home. I know people say like, don't choose based on location or where your friends are and family and stuff, but it was actually really important to me. Just location wise, like right now I'm at home right now and it's great because I can like see my parents and stuff. And then application process, it was really hard and really, really expensive. I think this year people don't have to interviewees don't have to fly out, but when we flew out, it was like, you have to pay for your own flight tickets. You have to pay for your like accommodations, everything. So that adds up really quickly. And then each app itself is like really expensive. So I guess I was pretty shocked about the price. Like no one told me it was going to be this expensive. So that's like one thing that really surprised me with the application process. And then I think interviews themselves were stressful, but also really fun because I got to see a lot of different places and hear about a lot of cool schools and then talk to many, many new people. So I really liked interviews. Primaries and secondaries were also kind of stressful because it's a lot of writing. And I was an English major, so I did a lot of writing in college. But this writing was like about yourself. And I think that is often a lot harder than writing like an English essay or like a journalism article or something. And it's like a different style that you just have to get used to. But I guess what really helped me was finding people who were also applying. So like, I think finding people who were also applying who weren't like super competitive. So like my roommate was also applying at the time and we kind of worked together, reminded each other of deadlines, like worked together in the library on our applications, read over each other's apps and stuff. And that was really, really helpful for me. She was actually in BPP a while back. And so, yeah, I guess my general overall ideas are just enjoy yourself, like have fun. And then also be aware of like cost and how stressful it is, like timeline wise. And I think that one of the things that was best for me was just being super organized about this. Like I wrote an Excel spreadsheet to like track all my costs, make sure that everything was like, I could afford this. And then also making sure that I met all the deadlines, had all the requirements met. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. And so you had talked a lot about costs, and I'm wondering, Ernesto and Andres, if either of you would like to, I have received a private question about this as well. If you know of like med schools helping people with paying all, like with did they all really expect all the applicants to just be able to drop this amount of money and pay for that? So if you could also incorporate that into your answer. I know there's a lot going on about this application process, but yeah, Ernesto, I think, yeah, if you'd like to go.
Yeah. So I guess the application process was long, it takes a year. But if you just do a little bit at a time, like Andres said, it's like one piece at a time, right? Like get your primaries in, get your secondaries in as quickly as you can, get your interviews ready, prepare for them. As long as you do that, slowly, you can eat away at it and it'll be fine. In terms of costs, what's the worst that they're going to say? No, that's the worst they're going to say. Like, why not ask a school to like help you? If you explain something to them, like there are people on the other side. It's not a robot, right? Like they will hear you out. And the worst they're going to say is, no, we don't have the funds for it. But they could also help you out with it. And I think Andres just put in the chat, the fee assistance program that the AAMC has, and that one gives you like free applications, and secondaries are like reduced, or you get a certain number of secondaries that are free. So there's ways of bringing the cost down. In terms of why I chose UCSF, I think the biggest thing for me was the people. And then Michelle, I don't know who is spreading this rumor about not choosing based on location. It's so important to choose based on location. You want to be happy. You want to have somewhere that you're going to enjoy being like you. I've heard this too. So it's not like it's a rarity. But choosing a location is very important, right? Like you need a support system. Life goes on and medical school is hard, and having the group behind you that you feel comfortable with is very important. And at least when I was at UCSF, I knew that the people here were so supportive. And I would say that's the other thing, the interviews are a two-way street. We are interviewing you and you're interviewing us, and we got to make sure that both of us work. When you get a rejection, because people get rejected, right? Everyone got a rejection, I think. It's because sometimes you're just like the compatibility doesn't work, and that's good. That's good that they know that, because you don't want to be somewhere where you yourself are not going to be wanted and cared for and like really like uplifted. And in the same way, you want to make sure that they're going to be somewhere that you feel comfortable going to the administration, talking to them, and them hearing you, and you being part of the conversation, not just another student. So I think that's one of those things. You kind of just feel it out. It's a lot harder right now in Zoom life, and this is something I tell all my interviewees is I don't know how you're going to do it, and I hope that just in our conversation I can communicate some of the things that made me want to go to UCSF. But it's hard right now to choose where to go to school, and it's an important choice. So I would say it's a two-way street. You got to interview them as much as they are interviewing you.
Thank you for that. I think that also helps ease the pressure off of interviews, because I feel like that's definitely one of the more stressful parts of the application. But it's nice to hear that this is also applicants' chance to get to know the school better. And Andres, if you'd like to add anything to what's been said.
Definitely. So take a deep breath. The application process was so stressful because I didn't know what to expect. And I know a lot of people find out these things on their own. And for a lot of people who come from a difficult background, or maybe you've had hardships in your life, you may be used to just figuring things out on your own. And that's totally fair. That's totally valid. However, when things like this happen in your path, where it's like a process, an application process, there are certain things that need to be done. It's helpful to learn about it ahead of time. It's helpful to ask for help. It's really important for you to not just get so stressed on your own, because there's a huge community out here just waiting to offer as much support, advice, love, care that we can. Because for me, it felt like I had been working my entire life to submit my primary. And then once I did, it was like silence. I did not know what to do with myself. Secondary slowly trickled in. And then when I heard silence from there, it's like, full transparency, it hit my deepest depression, existential anxiety, all that stuff just flooded my mind because that's all I could think about. And the reason for that was I just kept it to myself. I didn't talk about it. For people whose families don't understand what the medical school process is or what it entails, it's even more difficult because it may be discouraging to say, oh my gosh, like I haven't heard back. And then you just get brushed off like, oh, it's no big deal, like it's fine. And then that can almost make you feel like you can't talk to those people who are so close to you. So it's just a lot of anxiety. And so I think taking it one step at a time, knowing that you've done 20 plus years, possibly even younger for some people, to get to where you are right now, like these few moments, even though they feel so blown up in time, do not equal who you have made yourself to be this whole lifetime. And so um, I would say that the biggest sense of groundedness, sense of relief, mindfulness that I got was a quote that I stumbled upon, and I'll just put it here in the chat here. Totally mess it up, but um, it really helped me ground myself when I was freaking out, because when I was feeling anxious, I realized that I was just thinking way too far ahead. When I was feeling really sad and depressed, I was just thinking about what I could have done, what I should have done. Oh my God, I'm not worth it. And then until I had those moments where I'm thinking like, okay, here we are right now. Like, we're in this today. What can we do today? That's when I started feeling better. And so it was a huge process to really convince myself of these things, because I mean, who people have different ways of managing anxiety and all of these other mental um, health things. And so it's really important to know what works for you. And the application process is going to be stressful for everyone. And so it's important to know what works for you, and to really, 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 really try to not let what works for everyone else make you feel like you're doing something wrong. And then I second everything Michelle and Ernesto said.
Thank you, Andres, for that inspirational quote that's in the chat. That's really important to hear and remind ourselves of as well. And I'll direct this. This will be our last question, just because we're getting close to 9. But kind of combining these questions on what does a day in the life of medical students at UCSF look like, and if you also want to talk a little bit about the particular specialties that you're interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I guess I can go first. Day in the life of a medical student. It varies depending on whether you're pre-clerkships or pre-clinicals or post-clinicals. So I can talk about pre-clinicals. You know, it's classroom work. I think I'll talk about COVID times. You know, you have class about, you know, Mondays you have a full day of class, 8 to 3-ish. Tuesdays you have class from, you know, 8 to noon. Usually there's small groups. You're doing patient-based learning, learning like the science based on a patient presents with XYZ. On Wednesdays, I have my doctoring skills day, where the first half of the day would be spent learning skills like doctoring skills, seeing standardized patients, learning physical exam maneuvers. In the afternoon, you do a quality improvement project, where you're taking on a project to improve the health systems of somewhere in the UCSF or San Francisco health system. And then on Thursdays, 8 to noon, you have another set of small groups. And on Friday, you have some lectures from 8 to noon. So those are all the classes you have. The rest of the time is up to you for whatever you want to do. And in fact, I think, you know, the first 2 years of medical school, you have quite a free amount of time. A lot of it is spent studying, but you usually learn like what the system is for you to best learn. So I learned that, you know, I could study the week before and in certain ways that I knew I was going to succeed on the tests. And that means you have a lot of free time. And that's why you need to have a hobby. And if you don't have a hobby before medical school, you're going to find one when you're in medical school, because there's just so much time. Whether that's doing something that you enjoy, like I do cycling, I do road cycling, or if you want to, you know, be part of an organization like LMSA, like a PAMSA, or, you know, whatever else that brings you joy, you're going to find some space to do it. And then the other question was specialties. So I did reproductive bio, and in college, and I did infertility work and trying to return fertility. And then in medical school as an MD PhD, I have to do a PhD. So I did a rotation in a placenta biology lab, but I'm going to be joining a lab where I study sacrococcygeal teratomas, quite the mouthful, but they're actually the most common cancer in neonates. So meaning that this baby is born with a cancer, and it's basically a tumor on the tailbone. And we don't know where they come from, which is very interesting, and it's perfect for a PhD. And so I'm going to be working with 2 PIs here on this new project that, you know, neither of them are experts in, but hopefully I'll become the expert in. So that means I'm probably going to do something like an OB-GYN residency, and then maybe a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility, or maybe do some kind of surgical specialty like pediatric surgery. You never know what I'll fall in love with once I'm in the clinics, but those are the kinds of things that interest me. I just love development and, you know, how you know, how things develop, you know, in utero. And so I think those are some of the things I'm interested in.
Wow, that's very fascinating. And so I guess since Ernesto kind of answered this for all the UCSF students, Michelle, if you'd like to talk really briefly about your interest in specialty. I know you said that you were looking at different things, but if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I don't really know what I'm interested in right now. I think I'm waiting for that to, I'm waiting to figure that out during clerkships, which are coming up in January. But yeah, like that's all I can really say. I thought I was gonna go into something like OB-GYN because I really loved labor coach. But I did a little bit of shadowing in OB-GYN and I decided that probably wasn't for me. So yeah, I'll update you after clerkships.
And what about you, Andres?
Yeah, it's so stressful when people say, like, oh, you'll figure it out during your third year in rotations, but you're like, but I want to figure it out now because it's only a year. However, a year is a really long time to really get a sense of the different specialties. So like a day in the like life, I guess, as a third year in your rotations, most people have like, let's say 8 weeks at a time to going through different specialties. So for, let's say, OBGYN, you go in that for 6 to 8 weeks and you only do that. Then you take a test and then you move on to the next specialty. So you get a really good sense of what the specialty values, how they spend their time, what gives them joy, all that stuff that's important to think about as a career. And then as you go through them, it may surprise you at times. It's like, ooh, I didn't think I'd really like urology, but here I am doing urology stuff and I'm like smiling or something. So it kind of sneaks up on you sometimes. And I forgot to mention the YUCSF run. I'll just make it real brief, but a lot of times for people, unfortunately, it comes down to, do I want to go to UCSF, my dream school, or do I want to go to another school that offers me financial aid that will really help my family and my whole life? And so it's not uncommon for people to turn down UCSF for financial aid, or like choose UCSF and like take on a massive amount of loans because we just don't have that amount of donors yet. You know, if they're listening, hey. But the reason I chose UCSF was I knew my personality type, INFJ, and make all of my decisions based off of feelings. And so the feeling that UCSF gave to me, it just felt right. I didn't really know what that meant, but it was screaming at me, and I was really trying to, you know, shush it up and think about other financial aid, other like more objective features. And at the end of the day, the people that I met here during interviews, the people who just gave me the sense of like, I want to be around you a lot. I don't know what it is, but I really want to figure that out, or not, but still be around you. I don't care. Just let me be around you. So then that's when I started to really think like, maybe I should listen to my gut, because once you make that decision, financial aid, money, like that all just becomes a stationary number, and you just go about your day in medical school, and the place that's going to make you happy, and whatever that means, like if going debt free is what brings you happy, if being in a city that's like cool for most of the year brings you joy, like these things are really important, because life does not go on pause while you go to medical school. The first year or so, and maybe the first 4 years of a 4-year medical school, you're really trying to figure out that balance of life and this career that you're developing into. And so that's why I chose it. And the thing that surprised me was I really liked radiology. I'd never heard about it before getting into medical school, but the only thing that I was exposed to was family medicine, because that's what most student clinics are. So I'm like, oh yeah, family medicine's so cool. It has a little bit of everything. And I didn't want to give myself tunnel vision, because I know I do that. And so I really tried to go to all of the electives that were possible: orthopedic surgery, anesthesia, pediatrics, everything. And you hear people talk about what they do, and you get a sense of what they like. And that gives me a really strong impression of like, ooh, I like what you like. And it happened to be radiology more so than any other thing. So I just kind of went with that gut feeling, and took a couple of electives this year, and that's what brings me the most joy.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your specific interests and specialties, and also your like why UCSF. So Michelle does have to leave, so we're just gonna quickly take a group picture as we do with every one of our blood pressure meetings. See if like how many people I can get in this. So if you'd like to be in the picture, please turn on your camera. And of course, if you're not comfortable, feel free to leave your camera off. I'll try to get as many people as I can. Okay. I'll give you all a few moments to turn your cameras on. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right. We're still getting people turning their cameras on. I'll give you all a few moments. I have like 2 people who I can fit. One more person who I can fit on the, okay, perfect. Sorry if you're not in this, but on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so if we could all give like a round of applause to Michelle for being here. We don't want to keep you longer, but thank you so much, Michelle, for imparting your wisdom on us and giving us a lot of advice on med school. But everyone else can feel free to leave, but we do have some audience questions that if Ernesto and Andres would like to answer. And so if you all would like to stay for that. So I got a question regarding COVID specifically, and just I'll just read out the question. How are medical school admission committees dealing with applicants who may be unable to shadow or get clinical experience at a hospital due to COVID restrictions?
Yeah, this is a question that we've had as well, thinking about how do we consider applicants this year. UCSF is one of very few schools that isn't looking at MCATs this year. So that's not true of many schools, but I think because of the culture here at UCSF, we really care about being able to give people an opportunity to, enter this field that has been a very not diverse for a very long time, and we're trying to change that. In terms of COVID, we understand that things have changed. I think that's part of the application, like the understanding of like how do you tell your story and sharing that, I just don't have as much shadowing experience as some of the other expected individuals. But in that way, like, what are you doing instead? What are you doing right now? And also sometimes you aren't able to do stuff. You're at home. People have to go home. People have to be with their families. Studying is hard, like when you're with your family. So communicating that is also important. And I think right now, we're all in a state of we don't know what's going on and we don't know what's going to happen, but at the very least, we can hear your story on why you want to do medicine. And again, we don't really care about you checking boxes. We care about you being a good doctor and understanding why you want to be a doctor. So I think that's some of the ways to think about it. We have to understand that, right? People have to understand that you can't go into the hospital right now. So instead, how do we think about it? Well, we just look at what other things you have, what other extracurriculars you're doing, what other things have you done or are you thinking about doing? Why do you want to be a doctor? These other ways of us understanding your story.
Thank you. That's really reassuring to hear. I'm sure that this is a question that many other people definitely have with COVID specifically. Andres, is there anything that you wanted to add on or any advice that you want to share?
I'll just say that if schools don't understand that, something is wrong with them, because that is just, maybe you don't need to go there. Maybe you're already smarter. But yeah, like focusing on why you did the things that you did already, not all the things that you could have done, is important. So if you put off, let's say, trying to explore research or trying to be in a clinic until after graduating and that got messed up, it's like, okay, well, why did you decide to put those things off? Oh, maybe I wanted to focus on my schoolwork because I know I need extra time. The school faults you for that. That's not all right.
Perfect. Thank you. And so those were the main questions. Oh, I did just get one question. And also feel free to, if you want to do the raise your hand function on the participants tab and you want to like even unmute yourself and ask the panelists themselves just to get different people talking. But I did get a question about how you got involved in research and what were the first steps that you recommend taking to get involved.
I can give you a non-PhD perspective. And during undergrad, we were told like, do some research, you got to do it. And I was like, okay. So I just emailed people. At first, I just emailed whoever had good reviews. Like, oh yeah, they're good with students or whatever. And let me tell you, I did the exact opposite of thrive in a lab. I didn't know what I was doing. I was taking up space. I was literally just like, should I like do something? My TI was very hands off, so that just was not a good combo. And so I, at the end of the day, could not talk about research. It was not my most meaningful. Like I struggled hardcore, and I realized that I tried to go for things that maybe sounded interesting to me on paper. And what I realized was I really thrived off of what other people around me were doing. And so when everyone's doing their own thing and don't really have time for students, like I just didn't thrive in that environment. So I gave it a try, but it doesn't always have to end in success. Just you just grow from it in whatever which way you do.
Yeah, that's so important to emphasize because there's definitely that pressure that all pre-meds need to do research and need to love it and need to include it in their application. So there's definitely a common misconception. Ernesto, I see you shaking your head. If you
Yeah, I also agree. I'm like, you don't have to do research. Of course you don't, especially if you're going to be an MD. You don't really have to do anything. But that being said, I think it's just a good thing to try out because you don't know until you try it. The other thing I think is just like finding a lab that has like an enriching environment. So I think part of that is also, finding people who have also looked for labs. I was very lucky because there was a program to basically pipeline you into a lab. When I've talked to people who don't have some of those things, so if you can find a pipeline program, they're really great. When you don't have those things, when you reach out, really understand why you're reaching out to this professor. What is it that they are doing that you are interested in? And, try to like make it as personable as possible because we can tell when you blast email, I'm interested in your research, but give me no details. Like really show that you've read what they're doing, that you understand what kind of things you're doing, and that you're just genuinely looking to hear them out. And you can always say, if you don't have the bandwidth for this, like, please, like, let me know if there's any other faculty that's doing similar research in XYZ, because I'm really interested in this, because of XYZ. I think making sure that you're, again, genuine. Like, there's so much more opportunity when you're genuine than when you're just, like, blasting, to everyone the same generic email. So I think that's another tool to use.
Thank you for that. And Layla, I see your hand raised if you'd want to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for being here. And I just wanted to ask what advice you have for the interview process. And I guess, Ernesto, since you're on the interview committee, kind of like what are you looking for in applicants during the interview day?
Yeah, great question. So UCSF is a blind interview. That's, just well known. So it's a little different from other schools. I mean, genuinely, you want to know what you wrote in your application, right? Like you should know what you wrote because in schools that aren't blind, you're going to be asked about what you wrote and you're going to have to explain it. And really like show genuine interest in like what it is why you want to be a doctor. That's going to be a question. The first question is always tell me about yourself. So that's like a question you just need to know. And then after that, it's really just having a conversation. Most schools really like, by the time you're in interview stage, like you're kind of in the door. And it's really just to see, like, are you a human who I could like hang out with? Are you someone who I could just spend time with that I could feel comfortable with? Because you're going to be a doctor and people have to trust you. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of like interpersonal communication that occurs in doctors that you just need to have. So like, you just need to be a good human. I think at the end of the day, like, just be yourself and just be like enthusiastic, alive. There's an old quote that I follow from an old professor, and it's A cubed and E squared, which is alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic, and energetic. And if you have all those, then you're probably great. If you have that, that's perfect.
Thank you, Ernesto. Andres, I don't know if you have any tips from your interview, if you'd want to share as well. Or
Ernesto makes some great points. And I love that little thing you just said. I think it can almost be shocking to hear the first thing be, tell me about yourself. And it's like, ooh, are you sure? Especially if in the back of our mind, we're like, are we good enough? If we still have that sort of anxiety. And they just want to get to know you as a person. So if you imagine completely unrelated to medical school, completely unrelated to this dream job that you have that seems still a little bit far reach, if you just go to the park, you sit at a bench, somebody else sits beside you, you're like, oh my gosh, I know nothing about this person. Like, how do I know I want to be their friend? How do I know I don't just want to like scram and be like, oh, like I gotta go call, goodbye. Like you get to talk to them, you find out about their interests, you find out about what makes them happy, and maybe you can relate, or it's a matter of just really, really, really digging into what makes you you. And if you really love riding horses, you're an equestrian club, if you really love to go to the park and play archery, like when you start talking about these things, you're gonna glow. You're gonna start to get brighter, and they're gonna be like, "Ooh, like this person really likes that. Like, I want to know more. Like, I'm getting a sense of their passions. Like, I want to hear what they like." And at the end of an hour interview, you're just like, "Ooh, I didn't talk about my MCAT. I didn't talk about my grades. I didn't talk about any of that stuff," because ultimately, that's not what they want to know. They want to know who Doctor Insert Your Name there is. So that's what I will add to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such thoughtful answers. We are right at 9:16, and we don't want to keep you too much later. So, and there have been more questions, but to those who still have questions, we will be putting their contact information in the email. So feel free to email them if you have further questions. So thank you both for providing that. And before we leave, I believe, Devita, if you'd like to say some parting words for everyone.
Yeah, of course. First off, can we get like a round of applause for the work Andres and Ernesto did today? Thank you so much. I want you guys to know, like, they're doing this out of their own volition and time, like donating their time and energy and advice. And like, there are people who will charge you for this thing. So the fact that they're taking their time and energy is like, it's not something, it's like invaluable. Like, we really appreciate it. And you know, when we get to your spot, we'll make sure to pay it forward, as mentioned before. I also wanted to close this out. As with any panel BPP holds, we like to remind everyone that conversation does not end here. You know, take what you learned today, talk about it with your friends, your mentors, your community people, your social circles, with us, if you're looking for advice, and don't feel free to reach out. We're all here to support each other. This is not a competitive environment. We are either going to sink or swim together, so I prefer we swim together. And just a reminder, we will be sending a recording of the panel, a copy of the slide deck with all the organization information, as well as contact information of the panelists. So if you had a question that wasn't able to be answered today, you can email it to them personally. Just remember, don't send a general email. Try to be specific, okay? And also, finally, a thank you to my co-coord, Rebecca, the teams from MEDLife, KDSAP, and CAPTCHA for helping us promote this panel to everyone. Seeing how so many people were interested, I think we should totally hold this again next semester too. But in the meantime, again, thank you, Andres and Ernesto, for all you did today. And everyone, stay safe. We're in the middle of a pandemic, wear a mask, still socially distance. And yeah, stay healthy and take care, everybody. Good luck for midterms and finals.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Ernesto.
Thank you.